You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Why Americans Really Hate Washington's Elderly Politicians, based on an article by Matthew Rasa. The age obsession is a detour from the real crime, the source of the complaints. A conservative polling readout says voters are sick of a gerontocracy, old politicians, endless incumbency, donor capture, and leaders who seem detached from ordinary life. The piece points to broad support for age limits and term limits, then notes the exception cases that still animate people: Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, both of whom built identities around attacking their own party establishments. Age is not the offense. Age is the visible symptom. Power is the disease. Voters are not wrong to notice that a political class kept in office for decades becomes obedient to donors, insulated from consequence, and allergic to anything that would disturb its own comfort. But the useful question is not how old the officeholder is. It is who they answer to, what decisions they make, and whether they are still capable of serving the public instead of themselves. That is where the article's framing gets slippery. It turns a problem of institutional decay into a personality complaint about wrinkles and birthdays. Trump is not a cartoon of vitality. The piece gestures at Trump's age and health, citing visible signs, and a former aide's claim that the presidency demands physical and mental stamina. Fine, but the real issue is not whether Trump looks old on camera. The issue is that Trump holds actual institutional power and uses it to impose his conduct on the state. If the public is told to focus on bruised hands and swollen ankles, that is a distraction from the machinery of damage. The body is not the office. The behavior is the office. The exceptions prove the rule. The article's two big counterexamples, Trump and Sanders, are revealing for different reasons. Sanders remains popular because he reads as anti-establishment and visibly hostile to donor rule. Trump remains popular with his base for the same structural reason, though he channels that hostility into authoritarian grievance, not democratic renewal. That distinction matters. Anti-establishment is not a virtue by itself. One man uses it to demand more democracy, the other uses it to excuse cruelty, corruption, and personal rule. Treating them as parallel examples of voter affection for age misses the far larger political fact. One side is trying to build a governing coalition for democracy, and the other is building a cult around power. What the poll numbers actually say. The polling cited here is not a mandate for cosmetic reform. It is evidence that voters understand something the political class keeps trying to blur. Long tenure tends to harden into self-protection. Upper age limits and term limits sound like clean fixes because they're simple to say and hard to implement. But simplicity is not strategy. The deeper problem is a political system that lets leaders stay in place long after they have ceased to be responsive, while donor influence and institutional inertia do the real governing. Age is just the most photogenic part of the rot. The pattern. This story is not really about old age. It is about misdirection. It takes a legitimate public anger about stale leadership and tries to resolve it at the level of biology instead of power. That is a safe story for elites because it personalizes failure and avoids naming the structures that keep failed people in office. The democratic answer is not to pretend age does not matter. It is to stop letting aging institutions launder capture, incompetence, and abuse through the language of respectability. When a political system cannot renew itself, it starts mistaking longevity for legitimacy. That is the part worth attacking. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article. With the automated voice of Lesak, thanks for listening.